Hey guys, thanks for tuning into the channel. I've got a couple of questions recently about spinning tackle, and more specifically, whether or not I use a braid to fluorocarbon leader, or am I all fluorocarbon, or am I all braid? And this is one that I battled for a long time. And what I mean by battled is I was 100% fluorocarbon. Never did the braid to fluorocarbon leader, and I did that for a long time, really up until probably 4 or 5 years ago. I was a very, very adamant proponent of fluorocarbon, straight fluorocarbon, and that had to do with the fact that I think you get more bites when you're throwing straight fluorocarbon. But through a lot of trial and error, I feel like I figured out ways to combat that issue and to be able to utilize the braid to fluorocarbon leader to give me all the advantages that you get when you do a braid mainline to a fluorocarbon leader. So, it was not an easy decision, and it's still not something I do with every technique. The number one technique that I still throw all fluorocarbon on is a jerkbait. And I know a lot of you guys out there who are watching this think I'm nuts for throwing a jerkbait on super light line, on spinning tackle to begin with. But I throw all of my jerkbaits on 6-pound tests, light action spinning rods, and it's 100% Berkeley fluorocarbon 6-pound test. I feel like if I go with braid on my jerkbaits, I lose action, it gets too sensitive, it's just not the right feel for what I want to do. But almost all of the other techniques, whether it's drop shot, any sort of bottom worm, like a shaky head or a Ned rig, small swim baits, now everything else I throw a braid mainline with a fluorocarbon leader. So I want to point out a couple of things. So before I said I think you get more bites on straight fluorocarbon, I combat that by going with an extra long leader. I think you want to do at least a leader that's as long as 2 rod lengths. So if you're throwing a 7-foot rod, I'm throwing at least a 14-foot leader. And I know, a lot of you then are like, well, what's the point of throwing braid to fluorocarbon if you have a 15 to 20-foot leader? And really, that is to make sure that you still get the same number of bites. I don't want those fish being aware that I have braided line anywhere near them. I personally think that braided line doesn't come through the water as silently. Braided line is woven strands together, and I feel like it just doesn't slice through the water in the same way. And whether the fish can sense that through their lateral line or through hearing, I'm not sure. But I personally feel like the longer the fluorocarbon leader results in more bites, to the point where it's the same as throwing all fluorocarbon. Another key with that is you want to use a connecting knot that you feel 100% confident in. I use a uni to uni knot. I know a lot of people like the FG knot, or there's a bunch of other knots out there, but the key is you want to utilize a knot that you can tie really well and that you're not going to have any issues with. Because if you don't tie knots properly, you're going to lose fish. You're going to go to set the hook and your 2 lines are going to separate. So you definitely want to make sure that you tie the knots right. But going back to why I want to use braid to fluorocarbon. It's one, I think you have better sensitivity with the braid, and whether that's half your cast is braid and half your cast is fluorocarbon, you still have increased your sensitivity because you have some length of braided line. Braid is much more sensitive than fluorocarbon. I think you do break off less fish, assuming your knots are tied properly. you're not going to have any of those issues where you may have nicked your fluorocarbon, way back down closer to your spool, and you break off, closer to your spool versus closer to the fish. So the braid is just a stronger, more sensitive line. So you're gonna capitalize on both of those areas. The last issue has to do with casting distance. You will cast further if you have braid to fluorocarbon versus just straight fluorocarbon. Braid does not have the memory that fluorocarbon has. So when it comes off the spool, it comes off the spool hot and it takes off, and you will increase the length of your cast. And there are a lot of instances where I want a longer cast. So that's going to improve, that's going to keep me in the strike zone longer and improve the number of bites that I get. So those are the advantages, in my opinion, to having braid to fluorocarbon. It really comes down to, again, you want to have a long leader, and in my opinion, you want to be using the right braid and fluorocarbon as well. I think a lot of the advantages of this comes down to the fact that I can throw really light braid and really light fluorocarbon. It gets me longer casts, as I said, but at the same time, it improves my strength. So, I'm a huge fan. This is the X9, Berkeley X9. I think, the thing that's so special about this is it's 9 strands. So it's 9 smaller strands that are woven together, which creates a more cylinder type line, which allows for longer casts. It's much smoother coming through the guides. Really, the key to your braid line, whatever braid that you choose to use, is you want to have a high vis line. It's really important, in my opinion, to have either like this is a yellow, you can get whites, something that you can see the bites. And again, that's why you want to have a longer leader too. You don't want that high vis line that close to the bait, but you want to be able to see if a fish takes, say, your wacky rig, you want to see your line start swimming off. If you throw 10-pound test braid in a green, you're going to be looking for it. You'll never see the line. You'll feel the bite way before you see the line take off. So I personally think it's important to throw a high vis color. In fact, at this point, I don't have one spinning rod rigged with anything other than white or yellow. And then, I like to use a 6-pound test fluorocarbon leader. I'll go up to an 8 or 10 based on watercolor if I'm fishing water that has some tint to it, or has just better than average size fish, or if I'm fishing around a little bit thicker cover, I will definitely go up to an 8 or 10. But I can't recall the last time I ever used a leader on a spinning rod that was more than 10-pound test. I just don't like it. I personally feel like you will increase the number of bites dramatically based on smaller diameter line. And with a spinning rod, the spinning rods that I use, it really is more about finesse, playing the fish out. And as long as I don't have anything to worry about getting the fish tangled up in, I feel extremely confident that I can land the fish with 6-pound tests, or even smaller, 4-pound tests at times as well. So that's what I'm doing. I'm currently spooling up a bunch of rods here, but I think it's important just to note that there are definitely advantages to using a braid to fluorocarbon leader, and it's something that for me took a while to do. I made the switch and used a bunch of braid to fluorocarbon leader rods, and I can't say I was sold right away. Like I said, I started out throwing just like probably a 4-foot leader, and I felt like my bites were dramatically down. But through tinkering with it over the last 5 or 6 years, I've gotten to the point where I don't think I could go back to straight fluorocarbon on anything other than my jerkbaits. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Leave me a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are as well. I think for the most part, I think it's kind of more commonplace to have a braid to fluorocarbon leader, but I know there's a lot of people out there that still feel strongly about just throwing fluorocarbon. If you're one of those, let me know. I'd love to hear more about it. I love getting all the input from everyone that's watching the channel. For those of you that have subscribed to the channel already, thank you very much. If you haven't, hit that subscribe button. And if you enjoy the video, like and share it. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate you watching.